Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Battle Chads. I am Josh, and I'm here with my ever faithful co-host, Luis. Luis,
Hello, guys. How you doing? It's a good day, isn't it, Josh?
It's a rainy day where I am. I can. So my setup is in the loft, and I've got like skylights, as you can see. So when it's raining as heavy as it is now, it's actually quite nice. To be fair, chills me out. Have a little chill out conversation today. Smooth Battle Chads.
Smooth Radio FM.
So this week we're going to be talking about how to prep for a tournament Magic, basically, like physical tournament Magic. So I guess some of it could apply for Magic Online tournaments, but we're going to focus our conversation mainly on physical paper play in the light of last weekend, which was in the UK. There's a Magic company called Axion, and they're basically the premier tournaments of the UK. They don't get much bigger in the UK as they do at Axion. And Luis and other members of the Chad Magic team attended that weekend. And Luis, you did very, very well. Very well. I guess I could tell you where you came. You came 9th out of 155 players.
157.
157 players. You played the deck we've been sweating on, Blue-Black Murktide. So I wonder, Luis, if you could just tell us how the day went, sort of some of the matchups you did, some interesting plays you had, and then we'll sort of link it into how our conversation, link it into how this pod is going to go towards tournament prep. So, Luis.
Absolutely.
How'd it go?
Went pretty well. Coming out 9th out of 157 is a great feeling. I was 6-1-1, 8 rounds was my ending score. I was unfortunately the only 6-1-1 player, 19 points that didn't get into the top 8. I lost out on breakers. So I think there was a total of 9 people who had 6-1-1 or better. Will Hall was one of them. He was a good old buddy, Will Hall. I think he came. Was it 5th, 6th? Can't remember.
Yeah, something like that, I think.
And we were waiting to hear. Stefanos got a video of the disappointment of me not getting into the top 8. However, it was a very good run. I still made it to what they call the chocolate top 8, which is 9th through 16th. And let me tell you, it is a grueling experience to go through that many rounds of Magic. It is tiring. You really have to know how to keep your energy up. There's a lot of mental prep, a lot of physical prep, and a lot of just maintenance you have to do throughout the day so you don't burn out. And it's a lot of fun Magic as well. So it helps keep the spirits up, just having some fun when playing the game.
So let's talk about some of your matchups you had. So I think if you got a list there of your sort of matchup, let's go through them round by round. If there's nothing special to talk about that matchup, don't talk about it. Or if it is, then let's hear something.
Right. So the Swiss, my round 1 opponent was Red White Storm, or Ruby Storm with a white splash. This is a pretty traditional storm. It's I think the one you see the most often on MTGO these days. It is the one that I was the most prepared for, and also the one I find the easiest of the possible storm matchups. Dimir Murktide or Frogtide, very good into these kind of decks. You can present a strong early threat and hold up a lot of interaction for what they want to do. And you have some very key sideboard pieces like Consign to Memory to really play against them in a way that a lot of other decks can't. And while Silence can definitely get you sometimes, if you can stay ahead of the curve and fight them on the resources that really matter, it's really hard for them to get anywhere near a win against you. That's what I found out. That was my experience against Red White Storm. Had an incredible record against them overall, and it's why I ended up 2-0ing my opponent on that first round.
This matchup is one of those, if you've always got at least 2 bits of interaction against them, they're probably not winning.
It's really hard. It's really hard for them to go off. If you can find, even just 2 hard counter spells and a force or a kill spell, very difficult. It's just that they're asking to beat a lot. And if you find an early Murktide or Frog, their clock runs out too quickly. They're not able to actually play that game. Round 2 was a very pivotal round, as it's the only round that I lost. That was against Nadu, the boogeyman of the format. Let me tell you, I did not have a lot of experience against Nadu with the Mirror Murktide, as not a lot of people play it in MTGO because of the arthritic click intensity of it.
Yep.
And it definitely showed when I played against my opponent. I was very wet behind the ears, as they say, and I got by a few interactions that I really didn't know. I maybe could have figured out if I paid a little more attention. For example, I asked, thankfully I didn't cast it, but I asked, can I subtlety my opponent's bestowed Nantuko? The answer is no, you cannot, as Nantuko, when bestowed, is an enchantment aura. It is not a creature any longer. So that also applies to Stern Scolding, as I found out later in the day.
Card is nuts.
Is a very annoying card to try and play around with some of your interaction spells. However, that does mean you get to Force of Negation it or Spell Pierce it. So trading one set of hate cards for another. But that was my one loss. It was a 1-2 loss, so it wasn't a sweep. I did learn a lot playing against that deck, how to defeat it, how to prepare for it. I still didn't feel too confident against it because I had such little experience, but I learned. Round 3, thankfully, was a very easy matchup for myself. It was Merfolk. They unfortunately don't have the tools really to fight you in the way that an aggressive deck needs to. If the Frog is such a hard card for them to defeat. It grows way too big. It draws a billion cards. It flies. It is definitely a card that Merfolk does not want to play against. And even if they have something like Trickster to stop the flying, the counters stay on. It doesn't lose them. So very difficult. Very similar to Murktide, where the counters just stay on there. Yeah, okay, you made my giant 8/8 not fly anymore. Unlucky, I guess. Yeah, it's one of those things. So I 2-0'd Merfolk. Jeskai Control, harder matchup. It's not super one-sided either way. I think it's pretty 50-50 overall. They have plenty of tools to defeat us, but we have enough to out-tempo them out. My opponent didn't play a lot of Teferi Time Raveler, which was definitely a lot easier for the matchup. I think he had 1 in his entire 75. Still have to watch out for the One Ring, because the One Ring is a very fun and interactive Magic card, as we all know and love. I 2-1'd him. I think I definitely got away with a little bit there, as he conceded as we were going into rounds because he thought he was dead. He figured out later that he probably wasn't and maybe could have drawn it out. But he graciously accepted his concession anyway. So shout out, for allowing that and just going with it.
Good sportsmanship.
And I thought I had him regardless, but it was close. The One Ring can buy a lot of time, and it becomes very difficult. Round 5 was Izzet Murktide. It is, I think, slightly favored to us as we have better tools to fight them, but very close mirror. Expressive Iteration is a monstrous card for card advantage, and you have to be very careful. So you have to be able to play around it or counter it at the right times. And it has the same old of who has the bigger Murktide. Thankfully, I came out on top. I had a few better cards to kill his creatures, as Bolt or red spells are not very good at killing Frog. Frog is or Murktide. Whereas black spells are way better at doing that, and it helps out that matchup a absolute ton.
They also it's hard for them to make the Murktides bigger once. Like with Frog, you can turbo out a Murktide, and then once it's there, you can make it even bigger. And
I also ran Feed the Cycle, which is a new card from Bloomburrow. It's essentially a Bitter Triumph, but instead of discarding or paying 3 life, you exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food. In this deck, you're only really doing the exiling part, and that grows your Murktide as well. So it's a mini combat trick. I came out on top in that matchup after a very dumb, glaring mistake I made where I preordained and forgot to draw from preordain. Thankfully, we were able to rectify it. But yeah, mistakes happen. I had then had Nadu on the next round at round 6. I drew this time against Nadu. I was able to go to a draw. There was no clear winner in game 3, so we kind of just had to draw. I have no idea who was favored, if I'm honest with you. It was definitely very close. It was against a player I see very often, Dylan. Very good player, very, very smart player. And he definitely showed me some things in that game that I'd never seen before from Nadu. Shifting Woodlands is a heck of a card.
Yep.
Cling to Dust is also Cling to Dust is also a heck of a card. We played the most awkward game of I'm keeping you off Delirium. Please don't get Delirium. Please don't get Delirium. While hoping he doesn't kill me from the top of his deck as well. It was an incredibly awkward game. I think we played one where we just passed Goad for 4 turns in a row. It was really dumb, and we ended up drawing in the end. Round 7 was against my friend Sam Milner. Shout out to him. He was on red-green Storm, so Ruby Storm with a splash of green. Much harder matchup. I think it is significantly harder than any of the other Storm matchups. Because green has access to Devoted Druid, which I actually think a lot of the other decks should play anyway, just for the red side of it, because the addition of having these extra spells, these extra cards that you can play on my end step makes it so much harder for me to counter it and then be able to play around it. It is an incredibly powerful effect. You can easily splash 1 green land source to still cast the creature side, because the creature sometimes becomes a 12/12 just randomly, and that's a little bigger than a Murktide.
Yeah, you start storming off, and then eventually you've got a big creature that becomes your secondary win con.
Exactly. It is a hard matchup because of Veil of Summer, and if you play very disciplined, I think Storm is actually pretty difficult. A lot of the time, Storm players think, "Oh, against Dimir Murktide, I can't keep up. I can't just play Drago for a little while. They will overwhelm me with counter spells." And while it can happen, it's not that often that it does, especially if the Murktide player doesn't have some sort of pressure already on board. So a lot of Storm players go for that turn 2, turn 3 kill, and then get got by 1 counterspell plus force, or 2 counterspells plus force, or a kill spell plus force, or something like that, or subtlety. They just get got by that, and then they lose the game.
Yeah.
Play disciplined. Slow it down. See what happens. Trust me on this. Sam will tell you. He played that way. He took the first game off me, and I had a miracle win against him where he missed, I think it was a total of 8 Raw flips in a row. 3 of them that if he flipped any of those 3 would have been lethal, because he would have ultimated Raw, and then I'm doomed. I got so lucky that he missed those flips.
Better lucky than good.
And then game 3, it almost came down to a similar situation. I had a bit more interaction to play around it. We had a thing where he went for a grape shot, I think it was, that was targeting my Murktide and was going to kill it for 6 damage or something. And I had the consign to memory, and I was able to counter the grape shot to stop that. But his Raw had a 50-50 chance of flipping there and potentially winning the game. It missed. He died. Game over. It was a butt clencher. Oh my gosh. It was definitely the hardest storm I faced all day. Not to speak little of my next opponent, Alex from Team Axion. He was on blue-red storm, so Ruby Storm / blue, which was definitely the most diverse from the rest, as it actually isn't very common these days. He was playing Flame of Anor and Sink into Stupor and Baral as his blue cards of choice in the main deck. Flame of Anor is a very scary card. It draws a lot of cards. It can deal with the board at the same time. Thankfully, again, Frog very good against damage spells. Murktide doesn't die to 5 damage very often. So I think it was not the best matchup for him. I was able to 2-0 him, but it was very cool to see Blue Storm still, Blue-Red Storm still living and doing his thing.
I saw his list and thought, oh, it's pretty cool.
It's cool, isn't it?
I just thought it just seems weaker than other variations of Storm.
It's very good against the Eldrazi decks that Storm does have a problem with.
Yeah, it's because you can destroy artifacts, and because Trinisphere is a
Trinisphere,
problem,
exactly,
right?
exactly. So you get main board answer to Trinisphere while drawing cards. Tron has a hard time keeping up with that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a very smart choice, and the blue sideboard cards are very powerful. There's a new one from Bloomborough. Can't remember its name exactly. It's Gift of Fish, I think, is the text on it. And it returns a creature to the opponent's hand at instant speed. Or if you gift the fish, it returns any non-land permanent for a single blue. That's really strong at instant speed. And gifting a fish is not really a downside, I think. Not in Modern.
No.
So it's a 1/1 tapped fish as well. Tapped for some reason. Very interesting. Very, very cool. And that was the end of the Swiss, where I came out 6-1-1. And then I had the chocolate top 8. I was first seed there because I was 9th. I faced Eldrazi Tron. I think it was James, I think was his name, from Team Templar. I think it was a 2-0 against him. A very, very many consigned to memory were drawn. A very good card, very strong card.
Because we decided on 4 consigned to memory, didn't we?
Yep.
Because it just
we
weren't very impressed
good
with break. Yeah.
And it was definitely a correct call. Consigned to memory was beautiful against both Tron and Storm. We took out the breaks for the Harbingers as well. And Harbinger won me a game there as well. It also was very good against Jeskai, locked my opponent out. And then the semifinals after the Eldrazi was Nadu, the same opponent that defeated me in the Swiss. And I got my revenge. I 2-1'd him this time with one of just the best Toxic Deluges I've ever had in my life. Main board. It was a Archmage's Charm on his end step to take his Delighted Halfling. When he had Delighted Halfling, Nantuko, Dried Arbor, and I think a random insect on board. And I was like, he 100% has Court of Calling, and he's going to Court of Calling for what's the one that gives Shroud? Sorry, guys. I know we really should know the name of these cards. Sacrifice a land, gives Shroud.
Sylvan Safekeeper.
That's the one. Sylvan Safekeeper. So he did Court of Calling for Sylvan Safekeeper just as I wanted him to. He blocked my Archmage's Charm from taking the Delighted Halfling. However, what ended up happening that I was really happy about is he sacrificed his Forest instead of his Dryad Arbor, because he had Forest, Breeding Pool, Dryad Arbor in play. He sacrificed the Forest. I was the single happiest man on the planet because I untapped, slammed Toxic Deluge, and it felt good. Ding dong, the bird was dead. Oh man, that was the best feeling for a game 1 ever. I was able to steal that win. Game 2 is where I learned about the Stern Scolding not countering Nantuko when it's bestowed once again. He got that one in after a bit of a fight. Game 3, I think I just absolutely mercilessly killed him with a Murktide and Fast Frog just going ham in his face with enough interaction. And I managed to beat Nadu. I was ecstatic, so I lost to Nadu, I drew to Nadu, and I beat Nadu. And the one I beat was the one that beat me earlier. So I felt just it felt good.
Yeah.
And then I split the finals against my last opponent, who was going to be on mono black Necro. I think it is a slightly bad matchup for us as well, so I was happy to take that split because it was late. Wanted to go and eat, and that was my tournament run for day 1. The
it's not bad. So,
Mega Modern.
So all day you dropped 1 game and drew 1 game. That was your worst.
Yep.
And to get 9th as well. That's so irritating.
It was.
By the way, shout out to Templar MTG, who did very, very well over that weekend.
Amazing tournament for them.
I believe I don't know how you pronounce Smurfy or whatever he's called on Twitter. He took down the whole tournament with Zoo, which we've both been saying, and you've been saying as well, that Zoo is a good deck. It's a good deck. Like Skyon, sort of Scion, and Leyline is still good. It's never went away.
Yep.
It's just not very good against Nadu, I guess. But especially if you slam a turn 2 Scion into any deck, you'd be hard pressed to beat that.
Exactly. It's definitely one of those decks that I was like, why did it just go away with MH3? I mean, it's still really hard to beat that play. And looks like I was maybe slightly right in some ways. Very really well done by Templar.
Yeah, I really wish I could have attended that weekend, but unfortunately I was in a field somewhere getting dirty.
With a bunch of men.
With a bunch of men. It was good. It was very good. So, this sort of your tournament run sparked the idea for this podcast that we should have a talk or a conversation about tips and tricks on how to prepare for Paper Tournament, because what's coming up, the modern RCQ season, and I'm excited for it, you're excited for it. I'll be more excited for it at the end of next month when a certain bird gets shot out of the sky, but
yep.
I do think that tournament craft, or what you want to call it, tournament magic, is almost a skill in itself. Now we spoke before, and we're gonna presume that whoever's listened to this has settled on a deck, has tested that deck, and is proficient with that deck. We're not going to go into like deck choice. We're going to because if you want to sideboard and all that sort of stuff, if you want to listen about that, we did have a podcast. We'll link it in the show notes. A few podcasts ago, where we spoke to Helena Jackson on sideboarding tips, how to build a sideboard, etc. So we're not going to talk about any of that because we've already covered it essentially.
Exactly.
But what we are going to talk about is the human aspect of tournaments, how to look after yourself, how to prep for yourself, how to once we call it admin, how to admin yourself before a tournament and how admin yourself during a tournament, including physical and mental sort of methods of looking after yourself.
Exactly.
What we'll do is we'll put a timer at this part of the pod. So if you don't want to listen to Luis's ramblings, which I would listen to it because it's amazing. Well, I don't know why I'm saying I would listen to it. We've already listened to it because this is after that. But if you want to, we'll cut it there so people can come straight to the tips and tricks. So
that was my thoughts exactly. If you've made it, this far after my very self-righteous gloating exercise of ramblings of a tournament finish, this is what you've been waiting for. This is where we talk about how to really prepare and do a tournament. How to actively be able to enjoy it, go through it, and not get fatigued out of it. Hopefully this is a timeless thing for anyone that's listening in the future. No matter what format you're talking about, no matter what deck you're playing, this is what you want to listen to if you really want to know how to do it.
What you've got to be at home with, or be at peace with, is that you are a bag of meat, and you are a bag of meat that needs being looked after. So you need to look after yourself.
Like Tamagotchis.
So we're gonna, like Tamagotchi. You are your own Tamagotchi. You got to look after yourself. So we're going to talk about what to do before a tournament. So in 24 hours time or the next day, you have a major Magic the Gathering tournament that you want to win, whether it be an RCQ, whether it be an Axion, whether it be a 5K, 10K, whatever. You've got a major Magic the Gathering tournament and you really want to do well. Your deck sorted, your sideboard sorted, you might be sweating over the last card, whatever, but there's things you need to do. And one of them is sleep. Sleep is massively important. Now, go into a tournament late, so you might stay up late to sweat over your last sideboard card, for example. You might stay up late to have a few beers. You might stay up late because you've travelled there late. When you could have travelled earlier, but sleep is very important. It's very important to get a good night's sleep beforehand. Roughly, I think the guide is 7 to 9 hours, but you need to make sure that you get some good quality sleep because it will. You are essentially at that point the day before starting your tournament. Before you get your head down, before you get some sleep, there's some admin you can do beforehand. That includes preparing a bag for sweets, food, drinks, etc. Have you got anything to add on that sort of sleep, sort of prepping your bag for food, drinks, etc.?
For a lot of it, honestly, hydration is probably the most key thing. While food is important, you can usually go a little longer without it. Hydration, however, you will feel the effects of it much faster than anything else. If you are dehydrated, if you're not getting enough liquids, it's going to mess you up. and it's also going to just throw up. It's going to throw off your ability to think more than you really would expect. I can't, I cannot express it enough how much you need to have enough liquid with you. And then your regular bathroom breaks as well. You're going to be sitting down across from another person for 50 minutes plus straight, multiple times. You're going to need to use the bathroom. It's going to, it's going to happen. Be ready for it. Helping yourself hydrate regularly will be able to keep yourself regular with that as well, and you'll feel a lot better throughout the tournament.
You've got to think as well. You've got to think as well that when you go to a Magic tournament, you're going to sit in a room full of sweaty nerds, and it's going to be warm. So you're looking to want to take about 2 liters of water for the entire say 8-9 hour tournament minimum. 2 liters of water. Yeah. This, by the way, I will add another addendum. We're not going to account for any sort of medical conditions that people might have. Obviously, some people were saying like eating's not important, but if you've got some sort of form of, I don't know, diabetes or something, and eating's really important, you need to take that into account. Have like a grab bag or whatever good to go, because it is for the average bear, let's say, hydration. You could probably not eat for 8 or 9 hours and you probably be fine, and your concentration will be fine. But the hydration is key. Did you know, Luis, that I found this the other day? Did you know when you're reading and concentrating, you burn off 15% more rested calories?
Yep. As you can, if I read more, maybe I'd be a bit skinnier. Who knows? Yeah. But no, Josh is absolutely right with all that. It is definitely the key thing with it. Shout out to George as well for helping me out during the tournament. My blood sugar went low. He had his Sour Patch Kids ready, and he as much as he didn't want to share them so much, he loves his Sour Patch Kids. He was ready for it and helped me out with that. This is going out to. I know we're not really talking to the extenuating circumstances. I am diabetic myself, so to me it's a very close to home kind of thing. Really prepare for what's going on with your own physique and medical needs. Cannot stress it enough. It is very helpful. And surrounding yourself with a good group of people that will help you with that as well takes a lot of stress off. So that's really nice to have friends that can help you with that.
We probably should have been good having George here, because I bet he's amazing at meal prepping. I bet he brought about six meals of
he was all rice and chicken. Yeah, I don't know.
Rice, chicken, sriracha, broccoli, all weighed up, good to go. But it's one of those things. Like if you can sort of have a checklist beforehand and be prepared beforehand and have your bag good to go, so in the morning you're not stressing around.
Exactly.
Whatever. I personally, so what I do is I make sure I have I've got like a massive bottle of water I take, and I take like a few snacks, and that I tend not to have a meal during a big Magic tournament, because to me personally, I feel like a bit bloated after a big meal, so I don't want to be like, I was playing Magic, I feel a bit tired. That pudding hour that you get after a big scran.
Yeah.
But
don't skip breakfast as well.
Oh yeah, don't skip breakfast. Yes, so I have breakfast and tea. That's what I normally have when I have a big Magic tournament. I just tend to miss out my lunch or dinner or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so that's the sort of pre-admin you need to do. So it's sleep, hydration, and hydration starts the night before as well. By the way, hydration starts the night before. Sleep, hydration, and prep food. Because a good trick that I heard from Brian Koval was he takes like his own trail mix, so he mixes his own chocolate, nuts, and all that stuff. So it's like something that's really light but really high calories. So you can just grab a handful, throw it in, and you've just ate best part of 150 calories right there. So the grab bag with your trail mix, good to go. Because it is, it is exhausting, and like I said, you might be sat down sweating Magic, but you'll literally be sweating and you'll literally burn calories just by being there.
Or even just energy bars or whatever you want to call them. They're very useful. They do exactly what they say on the tin. It is a great snack for these kind of situations. And people don't realize how much they're really burning in just these kind of thinky events, or whatever you want to call them. Chess, for example, burns a amazing deal of calories, more than people would ever expect. Magic is going to do the same thing. You are thinking, you are planning a lot of motions. It is a very interactive and very changing game, ever-changing game that you have to constantly be changing your strategy around. So you're going to expend a lot of energy doing these things. Don't be afraid to have something to refuel yourself.
Sweet. So we'll move on to now the actual day of the tournament. So day of the tournament, you've got your deck, you've got your snacks, you've got your drinks, you've got your notepad and pen, you've got your dice. You are packed, good to go. So there's certain things you can do during the tournament that can to make your life easier. One of them is identifying where toilets are, etc. Identifying where the nearest exit and exit is, so you can go out and get some fresh air. It's important to get out some fresh air to sort of rejuvenate your brain, feel fresh, etc. Pack yourself some deodorant. You know, it might make you freshen up, feel more fresh, more than anything. You know, and it's being prepared for that day, looking after the organism that is you. During the tournament, though, there's little things that you can do to make your life easier. So when you're playing a game, one of the easiest things to make your life easier is a notepad and pen. Now, a notepad and pen is probably the most important tool you'll have to keep the game fair, because you've got to think whether your opponent has good intentions or not. Your opponent is there to beat you, so you can't take anything. You shouldn't take anything they say face value. You know, there might be honest, trustworthy people, but you've got to take it that, you know, they might be wrong, or, you know, they might just want the worst outcome for you because they want to win. Which is, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Well, I'm saying it sounds like a bad thing, but I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing, because everyone's there on the same sort of premise. But the notepad and pen is very important. Luis, what kind of things should you be writing down with your notepad and pen during a game of Magic?
Number 1 is your life totals. Don't be using dice to keep track of your dice.
Nope.
Just like mistakes happen in games of Magic, mistakes happen in just normal movement, day-to-day kind of things. Your dice can roll a little bit, especially the spin-down dice. They're not exactly the best at staying where they are. It is a common thing that a dice can get knocked over, flipped, moved. Someone might pound the table just a little too hard, and that dice will jump and move. Keep your life total tracked with pen and paper, because it also lets you see each and every point of damage that they've taken. So if you need to backtrack to confirm what's happened, it's there in front of you. Has someone cracked a fetch land? 1 damage. Someone shocked something? 2 damage. Has someone taken a attack? Yes or no? You know it's there because you can see the damage move. Don't take it for granted. It is incredibly important. And not only for life totals, for the Storm players out there, keep track of your Storm with pen and paper.
Yep.
It's cool to have the dice out and have your fancy tokens. Pen and paper is the single best way to do it, so you don't make a mistake, especially with a card like Rawl. He has his own Storm count, because his Storm count is only instant and sorceries, not every spell, whereas Storm is every spell. You now have to keep track of both. It is not easy. You can be the smartest person on the planet. It is not easy. This isn't about being smart. This is about being wise. Know your limitations on keeping track of things. Don't overdo it. Someone might distract you. Something can be said to you. Your opponent might ask you in the middle of your calculation, and you lose track of it. You're done. If you're wrong, you're wrong. It's over. You know, if you can't prove it.
So I've got 2 things to add to this. So one's a story, and one is just an addendum to what you're saying. And one is, if your opponent is storming off, you keep track of the storm as well. You as a player, because they might add a storm era there. You keep track of it too, especially with mana. So there's a story. So my partner Ellie, she was at a tournament a while ago, and it was against a guy who was using spin downs. It was only I think it might have been like not bigger than an F&M, like a winner box or something, but not like majorly competitive. So they're using like a dice, and she swung with an elf deck for what she calculated to be lethal. The guy then went to move his dice, but accidentally knocked it onto the ground, and then put it back after damage. I was on like 4 life, and she was like, "No, you were dead." No, I was on this. But because she was fairly new at Magic, she felt a bit sort of, I guess, not scared, but apprehensive to challenge that.
Maybe intimidated, right? It happens.
Intimidate. That's exactly what I was looking for. Intimidated. So if you're on a pen of paper and be like, nah, you can track it, because the thing that a dice doesn't have a past. Like dice leaves no trail. Like if the dice says 12, like how did it get there? It's just been put on 12. Where pen and paper.
Don't tell a D&D player it doesn't have a past.
A dice doesn't have a past. A pen and paper does. You can track everything. You can be like, actually, no, you lost that there, etc., etc., etc. So pen and paper. What other things you write? Things that I write are if I'm on the play of the draw. So I'll write my life total. I'm always on the left. My opponent's always on the right. I'll put P next to me or D next to me if I'm on the play of the draw. That's
Mulligans.
where I know mulligans. Yep. I'll put M1, M2, M3, whatever. Mulligans if it's my opponent or not. So if they mulligan to 5 but got a hand of 6, I'll be like, nah, mate, you've just mulliganed because I've made note of it.
Yep. Or even sometimes people try to draw an extra card, or mistakes happen, like with my preordain where I didn't draw from it, and we were able to track it because we knew exactly how many mulligans had happened and what card's number we should be on.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Also, the matchup, what it is, because you might face that opponent again. You might have some sort of go back on your matchup and try and think of plays you could have done or might have done, or sideboarding options for the future. You might have to face the same opponent in a chocolate top 8. Yeah. So what the matchup is, and then also random notes on the deck. So say for example, there's new cards in Bloom Borrow now that are coming out. If you see a card you've never seen before, make a note of that card, and maybe between your sideboarding, just have a quick Google of what that card is, what it does, maybe what kind of matchups decks it's in, etc. But yeah, pen and paper, massively important.
And one of the most common and probably best usages as well is when you thought seize your opponent, when you surgical extraction your opponent, you view their hand or their deck in some way, shape, or form, write down what you saw. You know what's in their hand, write it down. That way, when they use it, you can cross it off, you know it's gone. It helps you keep track of it so you can play around cards that you have knowledge of. Or when you see something spicy in their deck that you weren't expecting, write it down. Now you have that information and you can remember it so you don't forget in a future turn. And maybe your random, your storm opponent brought in a Blood Moon. You weren't expecting them to. Now you know it's there. Fantastic. Write it down. Now you won't get got by Blood Moon because you'll remember you wrote it down, why it's in the deck. So you fetch your basics and you're safe.
Yeah, exactly that. Any more to add on sort of on the day admin? So we talked about make sure you know the toilets are, make sure you're outside, make sure you get your pen and paper, your food and all that's packed, good to go.
Don't be afraid of asking a judge for extra time if you need to take care of something. If you really need to go to the bathroom, don't hold it in like an idiot. Just say, Judge, hey, I need to use the bathroom. May I please go and do that? They'll almost always say yes. There's very rare, where they would say no. They'll give you the extra time. You go to the bathroom. You'll be fine. There's a lot less pressure on you. You can relax. Same thing with maybe if you need to get a drink of water or something's going on, or if you have any sort of medical issue, it's there. Don't be afraid to use it.
It's only a game. Look after yourself. It's not your SATs or your GCSEs. It's supposed to be an enjoyable experience.
Exactly.
And being comfortable is part of that experience. So we've talked about what we do beforehand. We talked about what we're going to do during. If anyone has any other tips and tricks, by the way, during this, please write them on the bottom of the in the comment section. That'd be much appreciated for other people, I'm sure. So you've started your game, you've done your prep, but you can't win them all. Game 1, round 1, or match 1, should I say, 0-1 loss. How do we get back from that?
So the first and most important thing is take it one game at a time. There is no reason to keep thinking about your loss and how maybe you could have done this or that or this other thing to have changed it. If there's a clear mistake that you made, fine, learn from it, but don't hang up on that loss. Move on. There's nothing you're going to gain from hanging on to that loss and just beating yourself up about it. All you're going to do is demoralize yourself, make you play worse, and that's going to end up badly for you. Take it one game at a time. Don't worry about the future games. Just worry about the game you're playing now. Give it your full attention. Play to the absolute best of your ability, and that's how you come out on top. If you focus on 1,000 different things that don't currently matter, you're going to give yourself too many disadvantages, and you're going to lose. Don't do that to yourself. Just like you need to take care of yourself physically, you need to take care of yourself mentally as well.
It is okay to acknowledge that Magic can be an RNG game, and there's sometimes or some games of Magic you just can't win. But it's the games where you think you've misplayed and you're thinking about that misplay. And I've had misplays from last year. I still think about to this day, and I'm like, ugh, so annoying. But there's pressure on you. There's maybe people watching, etc. You've just gotta be try and find solace in the fact that is done now. Next game, Magic and your performance of Magic does not define you as a person. I think a lot of people online need to hear that. Magic does not define you as a person. If you're good at Magic, it doesn't make you any more of a person. It doesn't make you any better a person than someone who is bad at Magic or you beat them. Just because you made a misplay or just because you've lost a game of Magic does not make you a bad person or even bad at Magic. You know what I mean? If Reed Duke draws mulligans to 4 and only draws lands, that guy's not going to win. It happens. If someone beats you through playing well and you've played well, it happens. Someone's got to win. Someone's got to lose. It's okay to lose. There's lots of stories where people have gone X and 1 and then won the entire tournament. You know, and if you do scrub out of a tournament, you go X and 3 or whatever, guess what? You've won because you get to go home early or you get to go get some food or you get to play with your friends, etc. Doesn't define you as a person losing.
Exactly.
Your magic prowess does not define you. And if it does, then you need to get a life.
If it does, you're probably Stefanos playing prowess at a tournament, but that's, besides the point. But it's a very important thing.
So much.
But it's a very important thing, guys. Honestly, learning to take a loss and being okay with it will be one of the best skills you can really learn for progressing your tournament play. If you are able to move on from things and not hang on to everything at every point in time, you will play a lot clearer, you will play a lot better, and you will make less mistakes because of it. Do yourself a favor and work on that skill. It's very important.
Because guess what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you lose or win. It's nice to win, but if you lose, doesn't matter, does it? It actually doesn't. Like, you played some Magic. You go play with your friends. You with your friends.
Exactly. It is a game at the end of the day. Obviously, I like results as much as the next guy. I play to win. I play to qualify. I play to maybe win some big prizes. But it's not the end of the world. There's more chances in the future. There's more things you can do.
I will say, though, it does feel very bad when you put so much time investment into a deck. You've performed well with a deck beforehand, and then on a day of a tournament, it doesn't go to plan. But that should be part of your preparation process, how you deal with that. Because there's some people I see online, I'm not mentioning any names, but who they say, "Oh, I did bad this weekend because I went 5-3 or 6-2, or you didn't win, but you did very well." And they're like, "You did very well, and yet you're moping on Twitter." Like, come on, man! Like,
you can't win everything. No one can.
You know what I mean? Like, I know you put a lot of pressure on yourself, in terms of preparation, etc. But you're playing Magic. It's an RNG game at the end of the day. Sometimes you just can't win them.
Yeah.
But yeah. You dealt with bad breakers. How did you deal with that? Because obviously you came 9th. That was you pretty much did as well as people in the top 8 have done, like as well as people as winners would do. You missed out on top 8 by breakers. How do you deal with that?
It's pretty much, I guess, the worst best I could do, right? Kind of thing. 6-1-1. I was one of 5 people on 6-1-1. There was 9 players that were 6-1-1 or better. I lost out on it. My breakers sucked. I have no choice in how my opponents are going to do after I beat them or after I face them in the other rounds. There is nothing in my control from that situation aside from maybe I could have won a different game, maybe I could have done better. But at that point, you need to just take it at how it comes. It's not something under your control to how well your opponents are going to do. So why hang up on it, right? It's literally out of your control. There's nothing you can do about it. Just take it as it is and move forward.
Only control or worry about the controllables. If it's uncontrollable, doesn't worry about it.
Exactly. So for me, it was a learning experience, right? I came 9th. I was proud of myself. I did really well. I qualified for the chocolate top 8 to play in that. I had more games of Magic to play, so I focused on that. And after the tournament was over, after I did well in that, there was no reason for me to beat up myself about it. Like, oh, I'm such a oh, I should have just won. Why did I not just win? What am I going to gain from that? I'll learn from my games, all the lessons that I can, and prepare for the next tournament and do better next time if I can. That's it. There's no reason to beat yourself up about it and just go into these absolutely just spiraling bad moods, because you're not helping yourself and you're just making everyone else, including yourself, feel bad. Don't do that. Don't do that to other people.
No one wants to be
a sore loser.
Wants to be around that salty person who said,
exactly.
I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have won. No one's interested in that. You know what I mean? They want to have a beer with you and have a crack with you and share some good stories with you. They don't. I should have. No one cares.
It's okay to be disappointed, but don't drag it down. Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. Another thing on that, we could talk about don't play around, sort of things you can't play around. So, Luis, you had a piece on, I want to talk a piece about how I'm playing disciplined, and some of that. It reminded me when we talked about, don't only worry about the controllables. Again, it's the same sort of thing. If you can't play around something, I can't play around. I can play around a counter spell, but I can't play around 2 counter spells and a force of negation. Then don't play around it. Just don't. Just do what you got to do. And if they got it, like, make them have it, sort of thing.
Exactly.
But you want to talk about playing disciplined. Now, what do you mean by playing disciplined?
So there's a lot of things in Magic that people do that they go for these almost 50-50 coin flips or less than 50 coin flips because they talk themselves into, wow, this hand is so amazing if I just draw a land. Well, what's the likelihood of you drawing a land, right? If it's your first land, it is way less than 50%. You cannot afford to miss that first land. You will lose the game. Don't do it. There is someone in our team that might feel vindicated because he did it once and it worked out for him. What's his name? Duffy? But don't do it. It's a bad idea for proper tournament play and actually having results happen. Most of the time, it's not going to work out for you, and it's going to feel awful when it doesn't. You are going to get more consistent results and better results from playing disciplined. Mulligan those 0 and 1 land hands. You don't need to risk it. Even when you have 2 cantrips, your chances aren't very high. Don't do these silly things that are not necessary. If you play disciplined and give yourself that room of, I am just going to mulligan, I will draw my hand again, and if my hand is great, that is likely going to be better than this hand that if I miss a land 1 turn, the game's over. You're giving yourself less than a coin flip of a chance sometimes to actually win a game of Magic for no reason. And it's not just
mulligan into the matchup is important as well. So, for example, if you have only ponders and considers in your hand, yet you're against a low to the ground aggro deck, and you've got no removal in your early turns, that might be a mulligan. You might think, this hand does not win me the game. If their deck does what their deck's supposed to do, this is not the hand to beat that. So there's more than one ways to play disciplined. Don't play if you can't. Don't play into stuff that you can't play around. Or sorry, don't not play into something because you can't beat it. Like, if you can't beat it, then just play into it anyway. Like, make them have it.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to get into.
Yeah.
This was very relevant against the Storm opponent that I faced in round 7, the red-green, my friend Sam. He's a very disciplined player in the way he plays. He refuses to play around ghosts, which is how I call it. A lot of people will be like, they might have this, and they keep doing that for 2, 3, 4 turns in a row, and then they do nothing, and then they end up losing because I end up finding exactly what they were afraid of, instead of going for it and making me have it. Or they think, if I give them too much time, they will find everything and then the game's over. So they go for a turn 2 or turn 3 win with Storm, and then they get caught out by a single spell that I was likely going to have from a mulligan, because why am I going to mulligan to a hand with nothing?
Yeah.
And it's these kind of issues that people throw themselves into for no reason. And this is where disciplined play comes into. You need to really think about what you're playing against, the deck you are playing, and how they function. There is more than one way of beating an opponent. It's not all based on just getting your spells to resolve. Sometimes it's beating them in a mana game or beating them in a resources game. There's a lot of different kinds of resources, from life total to card advantage to even just things on board. These are all resources to play around. A lot of people don't understand those aspects of Magic, and they talk themselves into just playing in one way without considering the other resources, and then they lose constantly because of it, because they're getting punished for focusing on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
This is very specific to Storm players. A lot of them will just go for that turn 2, turn 3 play where I have kept mana up and I've kept my Spell Pierce or my Force of Negation up, knowing that if they're going to go for an early play, I'll just win the game. When I have no pressure on board, why are you doing so? Why are you forcing that hand when there's nothing that's happening to you? If I don't have a Murktide or a Frog in play, or against other opponents that are playing different creature decks, they have nothing going on. You're not pressurized. You're not pressured to do anything. There's no reason that you have to force these risky takes or risky plays for no reason, right? There's nothing happening there. Wait.
If you're doing a play, and if someone said to you, "Why are you doing that?" and you go, "Oh, because I can," or because it's there, or because I want to cast it, then if you can't answer the question why you're doing that, then probably shouldn't be doing it.
That's probably a mistake, and those are the mistakes that people miss out the most on. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And that's where disciplined play comes in. It's a very long, skill to learn. I am definitely by no means a perfect at it. I have a long way to go in playing disciplined and correctly. But this is something that I think is very important in a tournament to have the best results. If you're playing a consistent disciplined game, you will do well.
So with two more things we're going to talk about now is read the opponent and information concealment. Now, the reading the opponent can sort of come along with sort of how you disciplined you are with playing. If you see an opponent sort of looking and counting his cards in the graveyard, then there's a pretty good combat indicator there that there's a Murktide coming or some sort of graveyard synergy or interaction coming, which could influence your decisions. Reading the opponent, because the thing that you get in paper Magic that you don't get online is you can physically see an opponent, like they're right there in front of you, he or she's right there in front of you. They have their own personality, their own quirks, their own methods of doing stuff. The way they set the even the way that how they set out their play area. A lot of graveyard strategies, they might have the graveyard to the front so that they can lay all the cards out, etc. Everyone's got their own little quirks. But reading your opponent, and that's that's another skill in itself. It's what brings Magic to the level of sort of poker in that sort of sense, is reading your opponent. Do they have it? What indications are they giving away? What are they looking at? Are they sweating a bit? Do they look pressured? Are they irritated? Etc. 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 And you could also use that sort of the way you read an opponent to sort of hide stuff that's going on your side. If you want them to make them think you've got a Murktide, you might play with your graveyard a little bit. If you want to force the endurance out in their upkeep because you've got an answer to it, or you want them to make that play because it's inefficient for them but manageable for you. Things like you put your deck box down, like deck box banishment. If you're playing a Saga deck, for example, and you've got constructs tokens in your deck box and they're on display and they can see the constructs, it's like, oh, they're on there's a Saga deck. They're already like figuring out what you're on. Later on in the tournament, it might not be as relevant because if you're winning specifically, you've probably already been scouted out to see what you're playing, because why wouldn't you do that in a competitive tournament? Scout your opponents. There's no harm in doing that. You've probably been scouted as well, but early on, certainly, you want to keep as much information. Information is what wins this game. The more information you allow your opponent to have, the better chance that they have against you.
Exactly.
It's all about keeping that information away. Read your opponent and fishing for as much information as you can. You know what I mean? Like they accidentally drop a card out the deck and it lands on the table and you see it. Well, that's your fault. I know what you're on now.
Yeah, exactly.
use that information as well. Like, there's no harm in using that information. If your opponent was careless and gave away information, then that information's there for you to use. Like, there's no harm in that. Like, it's not bad sportsmanship. It's just the game.
Yeah, and that's why you have to be careful and mindful of your own objects and things. Not only in what you may accidentally show from your deck box or from things like that, but even in game, right? A skill that I think is really cool and really, really good to master as well is being consistent in how you react or act to things will make it a lot harder for people to read you. If you are checking your graveyard every turn just because you can, well, your opponent won't be able to read anything from you then. It's really hard to figure out if you have a Murktide or not in hand if you're doing it every turn. Because what are they supposed to read from that? Oh, he has a Murktide every turn? Things like that. Yeah. These consistent plays will make it a lot harder for people to know what you're doing from this hidden information. Give yourself those advantages, obviously specific to your deck, to why or how or what it is that you're doing. And if you're consistent with it, so you know what information you are sending out to your opponent, because sometimes you can even trick them into thinking that you want them to know that you have a Murktide in hand when you don't really, to get them into that false sense of, this is what they have, I got them, and then you play around them in some different way. Use these things to your advantage.
We're not advocating in any way, shape, or form of any sort of foul play or foul cheating. By the way,
no, of course not.
If you pick your opponent's deck up and you manage to just look at it, no, don't be doing
that's cheating. That.
Yeah, that's cheating. And we as a podcast and as a collective have a zero tolerance and that sort of stuff. And cheaters, if they get got, they deserve it.
Exactly.
We do not condone cheating at all, but we do condone tournamentship and we do condone gamemanship, if you know what I mean. Play the game, get the information if you can. It's there. Like, if it's out there and you're not part of a game and you can watch your opponent, you can see what cards are playing. That's public information.
Everyone's going to be doing it to you as well. It's not like anyone's not.
If you were a fighter, if you were a cage fighter, for example, or a boxer or a martial artist, you'd be watching your opponent's fights and how they fight. It's the same thing. You would, if you're a sport, you're a team, you would watch the other team to see how they play. Exactly. It's the same thing. Like, do it.
It's a professional thing that is done, right? Or you notice that they're weak on their left side. They have a weird turn that they do when they throw a punch here, and maybe you can abuse that. Whatever it is, similar thing in Magic. Read what's going on. Read the room. Learn from it. It's a skill within the game, believe it or not. Because those are the skills you can really perfect and get better at that will also help you in your overall tournament play. There's a lot of things to do with tournaments that you might not consider or think about. I hope a lot of this is helpful. And, I hope none of this is coming off too weirdly to anybody. I think it's really interesting, and I hope people enjoy it.
It's interesting. So the last thing we've got down to talk about is expect the unexpected. Now, this tournament that Luis did in Axon, for example, it was the first, I think, major tournament in the UK that involved Bloomborough. It was immediately after Bloomborough release. It was after basically. Release, essentially. So you need to be. So we talk about this. So with Bloomborough specifically, it's not like an MH set, because we're in a game where you have really high impact sets that completely changes the meta and completely invalidates old decks and creates new decks. A standard set is probably unlikely to create a new deck. However, it's probably going to be some tools in existing decks. But where you can expect the unexpected is from identifying play patterns in the deck. So, for example, Luis was playing a new card out of Bloomborough, a kill spell. Remind me what it's called again, Luis?
Feed the Cycle.
Feed the Cycle. So, in a blue-black Murktide list, that is essentially a kill spell. So you can know that the sort of heuristics of Murktide is they're going to have counter magic and kill spells. So that's the pattern of that deck. So you can play around patterns. You can play around game plans. So that's how you sort of manage the unexpected. A set like Modern Horizons comes out, that is like complete Wild West. Like, you
changes every card.
It's, you know what I mean? Like, there's decks existed that is basically MH constructed. There's decks that don't even exist anymore because of a set like that. That is like a wild west of a set. But things like Bloomborough, things like a standard set, it's very unlikely that a brand new deck, tier 1 deck is gonna show, especially in when we're talking about modern specifically here. Obviously, standard is probably changed massively, but Pioneer might be even impacted to somewhat. But when we're talking about modern in a world of Modern Horizon sets, in high power sets, it's unlikely there's going to be a massive tier 1 boogeyman deck that no one's seen before. It's just going to be following the same patterns of an existing archetype, and identifying those patterns is what's going to keep you from getting overly surprised.
Exactly. And if you are able to identify those patterns for the decks you're playing against, because realistically, when you go to a big tournament, you would hope that you've prepared enough to know how most decks that you're going to see function. It will help you a lot in knowing key pieces of interaction that you need to keep. It's unlikely that people will replace, for example, a key 2-mana instant or sorcery spell with a creature. It doesn't happen very often. They have those instant and sorceries for a reason. So maybe you know that, oh, this key 2-mana spell is likely to come down here. This is what they've been playing. Maybe there's something similar in Bloomburrow or whatever set that just came out. I'll keep a Spell Pierce up because I expect something like this. Sure, they may have a creature, but very often they won't, because that's the pattern of how the deck plays. Even easier in creature decks, because they tend to not play very many spells. They play a lot of creatures. So you know to keep up something that deals with creatures. These kind of things you are able to learn from playing versus X or Y specific deck, and that will help you a ton.
Sweet. So that's all I've got for this sort of podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Luis?
No. I'm very happy with everything we discussed. I think it was very, very good.
One thing I would like to ask, if there's only 3 things you could tell someone who is brand new at going to a tournament, like they played FNM, etc., they're going to the first RCQ, 3 things you could tell that person ahead of the game, what would it be?
Take care of yourself. Have fun. Don't take your losses too hard.
Yeah, mine would be, don't forget your water. Get your head down the night before, and it's okay to lose. That'd be my 3 things.
Exactly, basically. Want to thank everyone again for joining us for a nice little podcast. I know it was a little more serious, I guess, this time around with talking about tournaments. Hope everyone enjoyed it and learned a lot.
It's never serious to us, mate. We're just a bunch of guys having a good time.
And I hope you enjoyed the story time at the beginning. I know it was very self-indulgent and a lot, about my tournament run. But thank you everyone for joining. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave any and all kinds of tips, tricks, and whatever your best tournament experience was. Even I would love to hear about them in the comments below. Don't forget to just share with all your friends. And thank you very much, guys. Take care.
See you later, everybody. Bye bye.